What's going on, everybody? Wednesdays are Q&A day, and here we are yet again. Really excited to go over several questions from all of you. Now, before I go any further, I want to remind you that Sunday, July 14th, that's the deadline to submit your favorite pickup from the month of June to be included in the MidLife Community Show and Tell pickups from June of this year. So again, if you've not yet done so, down below in the description of this video, I have a link to a Google form. It's going to ask you a couple of questions. What's your name? What's the card? It's going to give you a spot to upload a picture of your card. The better the picture, the better it will look when I'm showing them off to everybody. But Sunday, July 14th is the deadline if you've not yet submitted your favorite pickup from the month of June. That has become a really fun monthly video, and I want to be able to feature as many cards as possible. Remember, it doesn't have to be a $10,000 card to be included. It's whatever your pickup is. You know, if your budget is $50 a month, maybe your favorite pickup is a $40 card. That's cool too. That is just as special as a $500 or a $5,000 card. This is our chance to share with everybody the cards that we've added to our collection. And I can tell you from my perspective, it's one of the most enjoyable videos each and every month. So again, Sunday is the deadline for that. With that said, let's get right into our questions for this week. First one right here.
Thanks again for another great video. Here's my question from last week again. I have a question about the Hall of Very Good and its place in the hobby. A lot of collectors focus on the cards of Hall of Famers, and it obviously makes sense because these were typically the best players and thus are more likely to be popular and collectible. Does this trend or habit prevent many of us from enjoying some awesome cards of some very awesome players who just weren't great enough to be in the Hall of Fame? Do you collect any cards of players in the Hall of Very Good? I know you've mentioned Tommy John and Tiant, but you have hopes that they'll be in the Hall of Fame someday. Any players you collect knowing that they'll never make it to Cooperstown? My personal favorite is Fernando Valenzuela. Thanks.
Okay. This is a fascinating question. It's a great question. And as a lot of people have gotten out of becoming set builders or team collectors, a lot of those cards of those really good players have kind of gotten overlooked. And the prices of many of them have become very, very affordable. Now, if you are still a set builder, you can get commons fairly cheap in pretty decent condition. If you're a team collector, you can put together, I remember as a kid back in the Beckett magazines, in the early cards from like the 50s, there would be in the price guide, in Beckett, it would say next to the Brooklyn Dodgers, it would have a BD, and next to the Yankees, it would say NYY for New York Yankees, because those cards carried a premium because there were so many people building team sets and that were collecting players from different teams and famous teams and World Series teams. But a lot of that has kind of gone away. Now, why has it gone away is an interesting question that I don't know what I would respond for that. But I do know that where we stand right now is a lot of those cards are now not as desirable as it seems like they once were. The Hall of Very Good, there are a lot of very, very good players that haven't made the Hall of Fame, that might never make the Hall of Fame, whose cards are insanely affordable as a result. You know, I can think of a few, like, how about even an Elston Howard rookie card? I mean, the guy won an MVP. The guy, was such a good catcher that it's one of the reasons that they moved Yogi, from the catcher position for the Yankees. He's the first black Yankee and a really great guy and person. but his cards are super cheap. Even his 55 Bowman rookie card is very affordable. Go to a 1962 Elston Howard card, very, very affordable. And he's a Yankee. So he was very good, but his cards are not particularly expensive. So I think that there are a lot of players that fit that mold. Now, will it always be that way? I don't know. Here's the thing, I've heard many times, and this is a kind of depressing statement, but unfortunately, I think it's pretty true. And it's 3 generations after you, nobody will know you existed again. Now, that's depressing. But I think about it and it's like, well, I obviously know my parents and I know my great-grandparents and I know my grandparents. So I know those 3 generations. But I don't know anything about my great-great-grandparents. So 3 generations later, I don't know much about them. Now, do we have family tree things? Do we have some lineage? I don't know what the term is. But the whole thing of, your family's history, we have some books like that. We have some pictures of people, but I don't know who they are. I don't know what they did. I don't know much about them. But again, my generation, my parents, my grandparents, and my great-grandparents, I know a fair amount about all of them. So is that what's starting to happen with some of these very good players from, the dead ball era? Is that unless they're a Hall of Famer, and even a lot of the Hall of Famers, you could go through a pile of cards. I could take a stack of cards with 10 Hall of Famers from the T206 set and hand them to, a regular person at the National. And I bet a lot of people wouldn't know who many of those players that were the hidden Hall of Famers in the stack are. So even baseball fans, even card collectors, don't even know all of the Hall of Famers. And there are Hall of Famers that I don't know of. I'm not trying to act like I have them all memorized. I remember going to the Hall of Fame years ago and looking at some of the plaques and going, who's that guy? What's his story? So I get it. And so if we don't even know all of the Hall of Famers, how would we know all of the very good players that weren't even good enough to make the Hall of Fame? So will those cards have a resurgence? I don't know. Will those cards always continue to be overlooked? It kind of feels that way. Now, do I collect anybody like that? I don't do a ton of player collecting. I do have some player runs, but I don't have a ton of player collecting. But yes, I do. I mean, if you look at the 3 guys that I PC, okay, I PC Greg Nettles. Greg Nettles was a perfect example. A very good player, defensively and offensively, for the New York Yankees, who won World Series championships, who was spectacular in the playoffs, and his cards are, other than his rookie card, which even that isn't super expensive, they're very affordable. And I don't expect him to make the Hall of Fame. Now, could he? It's not impossible. I think out of everybody in the Hall of Fame who are players that are retired with the highest WAR, I think he's about the 10th highest WAR of players not in the Hall of Fame. Maybe he's 20th. He's somewhere between 10 and 20. Will he make the Hall of Fame? I don't expect it. But I collect his cards. I have a lot of his cards. A lot of the cards you guys have sent to me. But I have pretty much a full run, not just of Topps, but also most of the O-Pee-Chee, and then a lot of the variation type cards and things. And I collect him. I collect my former student, Matt Manning, who is in the Tigers organization. And he's not going to make the Hall of Fame. Heck, my biggest collection, my main PC growing up forever has been Roger Clemens. And there's a lot of people that think he'll never make the Hall of Fame. I know some people think he will eventually, and some people say no, he never will. But Roger Clemens is a guy that I collect. So of the three PC guys that I really PC, none of them are in the Hall of Fame, and there's a very good chance that none of them will be. Now, other guys that I would consider, other players that I like, I like Will Clark a lot. I have a lot of Will Clark cards for nostalgia reasons. I have, as a 49er fan, my favorite 49er was Roger Craig. I just showed a recent pickup video where I sent the starting lineup card that I got as a kid to Roger Craig and got that signed, and he returned it. I collect Roger Craig. So there are a lot of guys that I collect that are not in the Hall of Fame but were very good. But the question, I think, and the reason that I think that they're not as popular is, what is their long-term value? Is their long-term value going to really be there? My dad was saying the other day when I had him on the channel and we had a discussion, he goes, I like Gil McDougall, but I don't need a really nice 1957 Gil McDougall card. And he's a Yankee fan who rooted for Gil McDougall. So I do think that there is sort of a line in the sand between what is going to continue to have long-term demand and what has demand that will slowly deteriorate. And to a certain extent, the further back you go, for a lot of people, I think that that's the Hall of Fame. Is that the way it should be? I don't think it's the way it should be. Again, I collect players that will never be in the Hall of Fame. But as far as the value, because of the demand from the overwhelming majority of collectors, I don't think the demand will be there long term for a lot of those just very good players. And so I think that those cards are not going to suddenly shoot up in price. So I do think you should collect what you like, but you always have to have in the back of your mind, if I wanted to sell stuff, or if whoever obtains these cards after me decides to sell them, do I really want to spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on, Gil McDougall cards or Greg Nettles cards, when there are some people that would want them, but there are a lot of people who aren't interested? So that would make the demand and the price for those not really very strong moving forward.
Not sure if it's too late to post a question, but here it goes. I have found that almost nobody collects vintage basketball cards or even talks about them. You have a little bit, but you are in the tiny minority. Is there a shortage of vintage basketball cards in the marketplace, or is there just not enough people collecting or even selling them? Is there a shortage of supply or demand, or both? There are some very expensive rookie cards out there, but the majority of the lesser stars are quite cheap, especially raw. I love vintage basketball, but find it difficult to find the cards I want in decent slabbed condition. What is your opinion on the state of vintage basketball?
Man, this is a great question. Absolutely love it. One of the reasons I love it is because I do love vintage basketball cards. In fact, I love vintage basketball cards so much that there are times I literally cannot understand why some of those cards are as affordable as they are. So first, let's talk about maybe why. Why are they so affordable? For one, I think that what America has always loved is power, strength. They've loved, home runs. They like strikeouts. They like home runs. They like hard hits in football. They like touchdowns. And in basketball, if you look at the vintage era, there weren't the same number of extreme athletes that we see now. Now you watch a basketball court and every single guy on the court is such a freakishly amazing athlete. It's incredible. You could make the argument that some of the best athletes, if not the best athletes in the world, are basketball players. the things that they need to be able to do what they do on the court is phenomenal. But if you look back at something like the vintage era, where Bob Cousy was a star, right? Where Jerry West was a star, where, Rick Barry was a star. Those guys were really, really good and really fundamentally sound, but they weren't electrifying. Wilt Chamberlain was electrifying because of his size and strength. Elgin Baylor was electrifying because of his athleticism. Dr. J is really the first guy that was like, wow, what an athlete. And those are the players that you start to see more value in than some of the others. The other thing that I think is that people like consistency. They like consistency. I've had people go, Greg, why do you think your channel has grown? And I say, well, I think the reason that there are a fair amount of people who watch my channel is because it's consistent. You guys know that every Monday I'm going to have my question to all of you. You guys know that every Wednesday I'm going to have my Q&A. You know that almost every Friday I'm going to do some sort of video, and then most weekends I'll have something else. You kind of know that when things are happening, when it's scheduled, what's going to occur. And the consistency builds consistency. And when you're consistent, people know what to expect. It's the same reason that my school day starts at 8:30 every day. It doesn't some days start at 7 and some days start at 9. It's 8:30 every day. Each period ends at the same day. It's consistent and it's predictable. Well, what didn't happen with basketball cards is there wasn't consistency and predictability. In the late 50s, there were some top sets, right? Then there was a Fleer set in 61. Then there were some, unlicensed sets along the way. There were some Burke Ross sets back in the 50s. Then there was really nothing for like 62 through 68. There was really nothing. And at least not licensed. Now, there were some oddball sets and some this and some of that, but for the most part, there was not a wide release of cards. And then in 69, there were the tall boys, and in 70, there were the tall boys. But the problem with the tall boys is because they're not standard size, there are people who love them and there are people who don't love them because they don't really fit with where they keep their collection. And so you went inconsistent with the manufacturers. Then you went zero consistency with even having cards. Then you went inconsistent with the card sizes. And then in 71 and 72, things got pretty consistent again for a while. And then later in the late 60s, they had another set that was a larger size. And so the consistency is definitely, I think, an issue. Whereas in baseball, from 52 to current, there's top sets, right? From 48 to 55, there are Bowman sets, every year. And that consistency and that the sizes were relatively consistent on all those years, at least from 57 on. And so I think that plays a role. And then again, after, 81, there wasn't a set in 82, 83, 84, or 85. So Topps was kind of there again. And then Topps went away. And then Fleer showed up again in 86. So when it's hard to have a history of consistency and a history of what all the cards are and the predictability and being able to see all the different sets, you're like, oh yeah, that's the year that they're large. That's the year that they're small. They didn't have any cards this year. They had some this year. That lack of consistency makes it hard to really build a fan base. So I think that's part of it. Now, all of that being said, they're really affordable. Other than really the Bill Russell rookie and some of the 61 Fleer cards, a lot of the cards are very, very affordable, and there's some very now. Of course, there's a Maravich that's got some value, and there's a a Luau Cinder rookie that's got some value. There are some cards in there that have some value. Don't get me wrong, but the fan base of vintage basketball is lacking, and a big part of it is because I think is for those reasons. I have several, so here I am talking on why people don't really have a draw to them. I am drawn to them, especially for me, the 71 and 72 sets I love a lot. So I thought, hey, this is an opportunity for you guys to see some of my vintage basketball cards. So let me go ahead and share with you kind of a hodgepodge of different players, and then the Dr. J run that I've been slowly putting together. Let's take a look.
All right, so first up, how about a 1971 Topps Wilt Chamberlain? This set is so hard to find centered. This one's really, really well centered. Probably my favorite Wilt Chamberlain card other than his rookie, which is out of my price range. And then I also have a 72 All-Star Wilt Chamberlain. This one is in a PSA 7 as well. I love that image there with him going up for maybe a block shot, it looks like. And then I've got a 1972, just the base Wilt Chamberlain here. This card I bought raw and had graded, and it came back as a PSA 6. So Chamberlain's a big one, but also Luau Cinder. How about a 71 Topps Luau Cinder? Little OC, again, that's a tough set for centering. This one's a 6. It's pack fresh sharpness, but OC. Now, my favorite Kareem card is the first one with the name Kareem on it, 72 Topps. I absolutely love this card. That's also a PSA 6. And then I've got an Oscar Robertson. I used to have a 71 Topps Oscar Robertson, but I just couldn't stand the image, so I still have this one. I'd love to have his rookie card from the 61 Fleer set someday, but this is a beautiful PSA 6 as well. Then I've got some Dr. J cards. This is the 72 Topps All-Star. So this is his rookie year card, but it's the All-Star, and it's in a 6. Not sure how. It's only a 6. Looks like about an 8 to me. And then I've got the 74. I'm slowly working on his player run. So this would be his third year card. Love that card there with the nets along the side. Then I have a 75 Dr. J in a PSA 7. Love his. This shows off his athleticism so well. That's one of the things I love about this image on this card. And then I've got the 78 Topps Dr. J. This one is in a PSA 8. Really nice card. I like this image because it's got the little afro shot down there at the bottom as well as him shooting. And then more athleticism in the 79 Topps Dr. J, where he's going up on the defensive end to stop a pass or something there. So those are just a few of my vintage basketball. Hi, Greg. Hope you and the family had a nice 4th. I said I would start to participate more in the community, and thank you for encouraging me several times. Here is my question. Minus your Strongsville Amazing Find deal, would you, if you could, take back all the card purchases over the past year, or several, to have again in your budget for the upcoming National?
Okay, so first, Jeremy. Man, what a great guy. He has been a viewer of the channel for a while. He lives locally to me, so I've met him several times at different shows. He really, really good guy. I've been trying to get him to set up as a dealer, trying to get him to make some videos. He set up a dealer a week ago at the Fairfield Card Show. I showed a picture during the video of Jeremy and myself in MidLife sports card shirts. He's a great guy. He came over a couple of times back and forth. We were saying hey to each other, checking in over the weekend. And at one point he walked away and my dad said, We need more people like Jeremy in the world because he is a great guy. I couldn't agree more. To your question, so would I take all of the cards other than Strongsville? Would I take all of the cards that I bought over the last year and not and basically undo the sale so I had that extra money to go to the National? For me, easy answer, no way. I love the cards that I picked up. You know, we all make mistakes at time, and when I've made mistakes, I've, quickly turned and sold the cards, sometimes at a loss. But, 9 times out of 10, I'm very happy with the purchases that I make. And the journey along the way is a lot of the joy for me. If I picked up every card, if I went and if I took $10,000 and I bought a dealer out, bought their whole collection, and now that was my collection, that wouldn't be nearly as much fun as if I found a card at this show and I found this card on this auction site and I found this card from this particular guy and I saw this Facebook post over here and I picked that up. That process of putting the collection together, of taking a piece here, taking a piece here, and putting the collection together makes it so much more enjoyable. That's one of the reasons that I encourage people to not just buy cards on eBay. Because a lot of the times when you just buy them on eBay, the story is, I got it on eBay. But when you buy a card at a show, you generally know, oh yeah, I got this card from this dealer at this show. And that story of how you obtained it is part of the fun, right? It's sort of like, 2 years ago, I went to Maui with my family. And, we took a Jeep all the way to the other side of the island up to Hana. And people who have been there have probably been on the road to Hana. And once you get to Hana, there are some, really pretty pools and vistas and things. And then there's this long hike. You take this long, and some of you have done it, I've no doubt. You take this long hike through this bamboo forest that's so dense, it's almost dark. And you hike all the way up to this massive waterfall at the very top. Now, if you just simply got picked up in a helicopter and dropped at the top to look at the waterfall, and then it picked you up and then it dropped you back at the base, it would make the experience so much different. And some people would go say, some people who have done that hike, it's a tough hike, are saying that would have been amazing. A chairlift would have been fantastic. But the process of making your way up the hike to the waterfall is part of what makes the joy of seeing the waterfall so great, because it's like, I did it, I made it, and all the things that occurred along the way are part of it. So for me, it's not about having the cards. Having the cards is great, but how I got the cards and the process of picking them up along the way and the process of finding them. Each time you find one, it's like a little victory. And it's just little victory, little victory, little victory. And so that is definitely part of the enjoyment for me. So no way would I undo all those sales to have more money for the National.
Hi, Greg. What are your thoughts on eBay's authenticity guarantee? Where if a card that's already graded and is priced at $250 or more, it then goes to an authenticator who determines if the person or persons who had already graded the card were correct. I've seen some sellers who maybe deliberately list an item for $249.99, which is technically under the $250 threshold. If I remember correctly, however, Ryan of Breakout Cards in one of his videos said that dealers who sell at shows should go through the slab authentication process too. I don't really understand if the card was already graded, but maybe I'm missing something.
So I think I understand the question. but I want to make sure this is, so here's what I think that you're asking. I think you're saying, why does a card need to go through the eBay? Well, what do I think of eBay Authenticity Guarantee? I think it's okay. I think in some ways it's a waste of money, and in some ways it's useful. If it's an ungraded card, for it to go to a place where eBay puts their guarantee behind it, that it's a real card and not a reprint, that I think has some value. I bought a card maybe a year ago that was ungraded. It showed up. It was not that expensive. It wasn't $250, so it didn't go through the eBay authenticity program. But it showed up, and within 20 seconds, I'm like, oh, this card's fake. This is not a real card. This is a reprint that was aged to look like it was old. And so I contacted the seller, and I said, I need a refund, and I sent it back. I don't know if, and the only reason I knew that it was fake is just because of some of the little tests that you can do to determine whether or not it's real or not. Now, I'm not an expert at that, but I know enough to, generally speaking, know what's real and what isn't. If you're interested in that, Ryan Nolan at Breakout Cards wrote a book on spotting fakes. It has a lot of videos on spotting fakes. Definitely check that out. But so when it's a raw card, I kind of get it. Now, my understanding about the eBay Authenticity Guarantee is, like you said, to get around it, some people will sell stuff for $249.99. But the other piece of the eBay Authenticity Guarantee is it doesn't do lots. So what sometimes people will do is they'll have a $500 card, and they'll have the card have another like $5 card or $3 card or reprint card or something, and then they'll list it as a lot instead of a single card. And then because it's a lot, it doesn't qualify for the eBay Authenticity Guarantee, because otherwise, if they did lots, then if there's 50 cards, they'd have to spend all that time and money and energy authenticating 50 cards. So it doesn't qualify. So that's another end around on potentially odd things that could be happening. So if you see a card for sale on the and it's a lot, and one of the cards is expensive and the other one's really cheap, just know that it's not going to qualify for that guarantee, and some people are doing that purposefully. So that's kind of, for me, a red flag to be aware of. I think what you're asking is, when a card has already been graded, why does a card need to go through the authenticity guarantee? Now, fair, but I guess my response is, we've heard recently about different fake slabs, different slabs being cracked open, a different card being placed in and then resealed. I would assume that on a slabbed card, part of the authenticity guarantee is making sure that the slab hasn't been tampered with. That's been in the news because that was happening for a while, or is happening, or whatever. So making sure that the slab hasn't been tampered with. Number two, making sure that it's actually the card that was in the order. So, I had somebody mention on the channel the other day in the comments, they said they bought a card and they sent, and it was in a 9, and the one in the picture was like really well centered. And then the one that showed up was a different 9, and it was like way off center. And like, I didn't want that one. I wanted the one in the picture. And the dealer, the seller, was like, no, it's just for a 9. It wasn't for that one. So I think part of what the authenticity guarantee is that the card that you are receiving is actually the card in the description and the picture. Now, another piece of it is I had a time a few years ago where I sold a card and the person said, I never got it. And I'm like, well, there's tracking, and it said that it was delivered. It said, yeah, but there was nothing in There was nothing in the package. I'm like, what are you talking about? Of course there was something in the package. No, it was empty. You're trying to screw me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So when you're talking about an expensive card, if they can guarantee, yes, the card is there, yes, the slab hasn't been tampered with, yes, it's the actual same serial number as the one that was in the picture. Because if there's a $5,000 card that's sold, what if the seller sent an empty box? What is the buyer going to do? If the buyer says it was an empty box, but the seller says it wasn't, what is eBay supposed to do? Who are they going to protect? Who are they going to believe? What proof is there that the card was in there? So by going to the independent third party, they go, yes, the card is here. It is the right card, and it hasn't been tampered with. It's in a real PSA or SGC slab. It's not some fake slab of some fake card. And it protects everybody, but it also protects eBay against some sort of claim that a card wasn't delivered. And do those things happen? Absolutely, those things. I've had people send me the wrong card before. I've had people claim they didn't get the card that I sent them because the package was... does that happen a lot? Of course not. But does it happen? Yes. And when you're dealing with high dollar things, and eBay's got buyer protection and seller protections, they also need to protect against fraud. So I think that that's the reason for all of this stuff on why it's probably a good idea to have the authenticity guarantee, is just to prevent unscrupulous activities.
Great video as always, Greg. Here's a short question which hopefully you haven't answered before. What is the most meaningful card in your collection? By meaningful, I mean a card that has a personal value to you beyond its market value because of how you obtained it or for some other personal but shareable reason. For example, one of the most meaningful cards in my collection is my 1989 Upper Deck Ken Griffey Jr. rookie that my dad unexpectedly got for me after I underwent minor surgery when I was a 10-year-old. It booked for like $10 at the time, and I never thought I would be able to afford one. And I was flabbergasted to get one that day.
That's a great question. We all certainly have cards in our collection that have a much bigger meaning and monetary value to us than they would to other people. And it might be how we got the card. It might be when we got the card. But in a lot of cases, it's probably where we got the card and who we got the card from. You know, anytime you get a gift, the gift means more than the physical item itself. And so there's no doubt about it that this is the case for a lot of us. Like you mentioned in your example, is a meaningful gift that the Ken Griffey Jr. card, and why you got it and how you were surprised that you got it. And that makes it super meaningful to you and way more valuable to you than it would ever be to anyone else. So I have some cards like that for sure. I've received a lot of really nice gifts from all of you. I've had a lot of cards that have stories to them. I've told the story about my 84 Fleer update Roger Clemens and how I couldn't afford that, and how I won a gift certificate for a card show and a raffle at a card show and ended up with the card. But when you ask this, I do have a card in my collection that has extra meaning to me, that it's not an expensive card, it's not a valuable card, but it's very meaningful to me. So I'll tell you the story and then I'll show you the card. So I was really young. I was 5 or 6 when my parents got divorced. And, you know, that's obviously not enjoyable for anyone in the family. And so what happened is, you know, now I've got my mom on a single income trying to support a household, and then my dad on a single income trying to support a household. And so it makes money very tight. Now, I never went like without, I was always fed. I always had clothes. I always had, cleats for my baseball games and stuff. But things were definitely tight because instead of having two incomes for one home, there are two incomes for two homes. And that makes it really difficult. And so there wasn't a lot of extra to go around when I was a kid. And so I spent half the week at my mom's house, and then Wednesdays I'd go over to my dad's house for the second half of the week. And so there were days where I wouldn't be with my mom or I wouldn't be with my dad. And so my dad started this little tradition that he did for several years. And not every week, but maybe once a month or so, when I was gone, when I was at my mom's house, he would take something for me and he would get me a little gift. It might have been a candy bar. It might have been a pack of cards. It could have been anything. Usually something fairly inexpensive. And he would put it on the corner of my dresser. So when I would open my door and walk in my room, the first thing I would see is my dresser. And right on the dresser is that spot. And he would put little gifts there for me. So when I came back over from my mom's house, a lot of the time I'd open the door and be like, look, to see if he had brought me a gift. And so there was a card that he got me one time. Now, again, I started collecting cards in 1987. And, 1987, 1988, especially, as Yankee fans, the guy was Don Mattingly, right? Don Mattingly had broke like the season Grand Slam record, I think in 87. He won some batting title. He won a batting title in there. He was a star of the New York Yankees. And so he was kind of the guy. And so, at the time, there was no eBay. There weren't card shops I was aware of. And if there were a ways away. And there was, so this would have been in about 1988. And I came in and I walk in my room and this card is on the corner in the spot. And it's a 1986 Donruss Don Mattingly card. And at the time, in about 1988, anything that wasn't Topps was like, whoa, it's a Fleer, it's a Donruss, because those you didn't see as much, because they didn't sell those at, I think it was Price Club at the time, Costco, Price Club, something like that. And so you didn't have a lot of Donruss cards, you didn't have a lot of Fleer cards. And this was a 1986, so this card was old. This was like a third-year Don Mattingly card, right? It wasn't just a Don Mattingly 1988 Topps card, which I probably had 4 of at the time. So that was a super special card. It was an old card for me, at the time. It was of the superstar of the team who's at the height of his fame and legendary status. And, it was just a very special card. And it was probably the best card in my collection for a couple years. And so that card is a really special card to me and always will be. With that said, if you've got a question for next week's episode, please don't hesitate to ask. Just simply in the comments below, just type out your question and I'll add it to my running list of questions for future episodes. Thank you to everyone who submitted a question this week, and I look forward to your comments down below.